6 o'clock. I have an engagement as Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I will also need to leave early, depending.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? Okay, I have two. So I have 2 other regible interests. I'm both the chair of Active Norfolk Foundation, which is a charitable trust offshoot of Active Norfolk. We have Active Norfolk represented today, and I'm also a parkrun ambassador, and it's likely that I will mention parkrun when we're looking at the sports item. So that's that. Thank you. Item 3, the minutes. The minutes of the meeting held on the 18th September are before the committee for confirmation. Are there any points of accuracy that need to be raised? Now, in which case, I'll propose those. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Galvin. All those in favour, please indicate. Okay, they're approved. Councillor Galvin, I think, has an update on one of the items covered, and there was no other sensible place to pop it into the agenda. So it's HOSC related. So if we just hear that now.
Thank you. Can everyone hear okay? Good. So at in the last meeting, we discussed the vulnerable adult service and the changes, and we had a recommendation to ask HOSC, and I think that recommendation has gone off. But subsequently, I have had some correspondence about that, so I wanted to update everyone briefly on that because it is important and it's timely as well. So the ICB is currently reletting the contract and had an open letter sent to me and to all HOSC members today from the Faculty of Homeless and Inclusion Health and Pathway, and to express their grave concern at proposals to commission the reduced level of primary care for people experiencing homelessness from the Inclusion Health Hub, which is known locally as the VAS. So I just wanted to share it with you slightly, and I'll probably, with your permission, circulate it to members of HOSC, and perhaps then it could be included in the minutes if that's okay. They say, we believe it's vital when people are experiencing homelessness that they are offered a level of access to care and quality of care that's at least as good as that offered to the housed population, in order not to worsen the health inequities faced by this group and to mitigate the extreme safety risks they face. All other members of the population are routinely treated at the practice at which they are fully registered. This helps with essential elements of good primary care, such as building a personal relationship with the practice and its professionals, continuity of care, continuity of record, and a single service having oversight of coordination of care. The proposed model of service that offers only 6 weeks of registration at the specialist practice and registration at a different non-specialist practice presents obvious risks to all of the above, and to clarity about who has overall responsibility for the care of these vulnerable patients. It also risks confusion in the patient's mind as to where to go when for a particular problem, and means them having to deal with 2 different practice systems. The faculty standards for primary care highlight the need for registration at the first appointment for these reasons. The Faculty for Homeless and Inclusion Health Service standards for commissioners and service providers, Pathway, and the NICE guidelines and other guidelines outline these important principles to be followed to allow people who are homeless to access the help they need from a specialist practice. Offering a lower standard of care to this group by being registered with a practice lacking specialist interest and experience and confusing responsibility will inevitably lead to even poorer outcomes for this already underserved group, reduce continuity of care, and very likely raise the risks of serious harm to patients. We urge you to reconsider your current plans and commission a specialist homelessness service that can offer full permanent registration, where these patients' more complex needs will be properly understood and fully met. So I wanted to share that with you because I received it as a member of HOSC. It's particularly important to this city because it's a city-based service that's rather rare, and it's currently being looked at by HOSC, hopefully. So thank you for your forbearance to hear that, and I'll make sure it's circulated.
Great. Thank you very much for that. So we'll now move on to item 4, which is a sport and physical activity strategy review. I'd like to welcome George Webster to the committee. As George has already indicated, he's the Communities Officer for Norwich at Active Norfolk. Councillor Kidman, I believe you're going to give the sort of presentation on that for us in your cabinet member capacity.
Yep, thank you, Chair. I'm going to walk you through a slide presentation, which you've got up there on the screen in front of you. Let me go on to there first.
And we go into slideshow mode on this. Yeah, didn't know who was driving.
Thank you. Yep, we're there. So, a Fairer Norwich is one of our 5 priorities within We Are Norwich, and we've set out what we want to prioritise health and well-being, that we want to prioritise health and well-being for all, and we've pledged that people have better health outcomes and longer life expectancy. The physical activity and sport strategy is a key component of our work to deliver that pledge. The need in Norwich is great. The 2021 census told us that 19.1% of people describe themselves as having a disability, 5% are in bad or very bad health, 41% are economically inactive, and only 11.5% of people use active travel to get to work. So over the next few slides, I'll give an overview of the strategy, and I'll look forward to hearing your questions and suggestions on this very important area of work. So the physical activity and sport strategy is a shared strategy for the Greater Norwich Partnership, which includes ourselves, South Norfolk Council, Broadland District Council and Norfolk County Council, and aims to increase levels of physical activity and sport, addressing health, social isolation and economic challenges. The strategy was adopted by the Greater Norwich Growth Board in October 2022. Its mission is to tackle inactivity by supporting facilities and promoting active lifestyles, and its vision is to improve residents' health, well-being and quality of life through increased activity. It's governed by the Sport and Physical Activity Working Group, which includes councils, public health, Active Norfolk and other relevant partners as required, with regular reviews and annual reporting to the Greater Norwich Growth Board. The strategy was developed in line with Sport England's strategic outcomes planning guidance and followed a public consultation exercise and survey, which was targeted to reach all adults in the Greater Norwich area. The survey received a total of 4,066 responses, and 2,289 responses, or 56.3%, were from Norwich residents. There are 8 programme areas identified in the strategy. I'll tell you a little bit more about these. So these are active environments, the provision of spaces and places which promote physical activity, active systems, developing fit-for-purpose systems which have physical activity at their core, active health, working in partnership with the health system to tackle mental and physical health conditions through physical activity, active travel, promoting physically active means of travelling, active workplaces, local businesses helping their workforces to be physically active, active education, supporting all pupils to form active habits for life, workforce development, developing a fit-for-purpose physical activity workforce that delivers a great customer experience, and raising awareness of physical activity and of opportunities to be active. And the report, which was shared with you, set out some examples of the activities being delivered across these work areas. So as you'll see from the list on the slide, there's a wide range of funding to support this work. This includes large-scale capital projects such as Sport England's Swimming Pool Support Fund, which enabled the installation of the solar array at Riverside Leisure Centre, and project funding to meet a particular need. For example, a cancer rehabilitation group funded by the Big C, and we are extremely grateful to all the partners involved in this project, So this slide includes some examples of the types of projects that have been delivered to support the strategy. Ballin' with a Bobby is a programme of free basketball sessions which aim to break down barriers between local people and the police. Sessions have been held in a range of our parks and open spaces, and the project has been developed in partnership with Active Norfolk, Norfolk Hoopsters, Norfolk Police and the City Council. Active Now is an exercise referral scheme which makes it easier for healthcare professionals to refer patients who would benefit from physical activity. And there's a wide range of partners involved in this project, including the Norfolk and Waveney Integrated Care System, Active Norfolk, various leisure centres and community centres, and Broadland and South Norfolk councils. And there have been over 11,000 people referred to Active Now. (1,247) referrals are made to people living in Norwich, and of those, 42% come from the most deprived areas. 67% of people referred to physical activity reported improvements in fitness, health, condition management, well-being, self-esteem and socialising, and they reported still being active 6 months later. So I hope that was a helpful overview of the contents of the Scrutiny report, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much for that. Do we have any questions from members on this? So Councillor Hirkner first, then Councillor Galvin.
Thank you very much. Very interesting read. I have a question about the partnerships. There's a long list and it ends and others. So maybe the groups I'll ask about have been engaged with, but I'd like to know about engagement with specifically active travel groups like Norwich Cycling Campaign or Sustrans or Cycling UK, whether they were whether there's partnerships with them as well. And I guess there's a broader question around active travel and how what is being done to ensure that there's safe cycling routes, or that maybe active travel that involves taking a bus and then walking the rest. Are we, is that being looked at as well?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really important question. I think I'll pass over to either Greg or George. Would you, one of you would like to take up that one on the cycling? Thank you.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Sustrans is a key partner who deal with, and we also deal with public health as well. So the link is kind of there. Public health sit on the working group where we look after the strategy. So yeah, and Sustrans are part of that. We work with them and kind of, I suppose, work together rather than dictate what they do, so to speak. But also we then link in with Beryl as well. So where we've got the provision of the 3 minutes and things like that through Beryl to help encourage active travel. We also make sure that it's part of any of our projects and funding projects. So things, for example, like where we've done Eaton Park with the changing facilities, we've also put in cycle racks and things like that to encourage the active travel. And obviously, like other projects, we make sure that there's routes and safe routes in, and they've got cycling access and then safe storage as well. And just a bit, we kind of work to make that, I suppose, what's the word? I guess logical, where we place the cycle racks rather than just putting them in the park. We put them by facilities so that it encourages more use rather than just sort of higgledy-piggledy. Yeah, we've got them in there. It's done, kind of signed off. We're much more strategic about where they're put and things like that. Anything to add, George?
Yeah, something that's very important, and a project that we're working on at the moment is with a number of Norwich-based schools where they can access up to £5,000 to develop active travel initiatives. So embedding those behaviours from an early age and influencing families, but also school policies and how they look to promote it as well in the local communities.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear. I guess just from my experience, a major obstacle to cycling is not feeling safe on the road, and they're not being cycling routes that are set apart for cyclists, that are separate from the motorists. And I know you can't be looking into everything, but is there an active conversation around making sure that all routes include safe cycling options and not just kind of here and there?
I mean, it's something that we always try and influence Active North in terms of active travel and Norfolk County Council and the planning that goes into those routes, and always make improvements. And it's something that's ongoing, and that it's constantly needs improving in terms of access and routes into Norwich and around Norwich as well. So it's something that we do constantly work on a review.
Thank you. Councillor Galvin.
Thank you. Thank you for the report as well. Yes, very interesting and useful. The graph figure 2 and figure 1 indeed and 2, it is concerning, isn't it? Because figure 1 shows the percentage of active adults is actually falling from 2021 to 23, where the England average is rising, is increasing. So the percentage of active adults here in Greater Norwich is falling against the national trend. Figure 2 shows a percentage of adults classified as overweight or obese in Greater Norwich is rising against the national trend. So I think we have got a challenge here, haven't we, in those ways. I wonder if, I suppose this is a wider point. Do you think the strategy needs adjusting because of that? So that brings me on to a point around how you monitor it against outcomes, because I can see a lot of outputs through it, but how is it sort of linked to those wider metrics? There is an infographic and it does show investment and some top level figures of things that have happened, but some of them also looked to me as if they were ongoing anyway. So, we've got this report dealing with a very specific problem. We can see the situation's actually worsening in a couple of the metrics. I'm sure it's getting better in others because of all your good work. But how do you link the work that we're trying to do to the bigger health picture outcomes? And could we have a more precise report on impacts, or how these actions link to impacts?
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. Yeah, obesity in children, as you mentioned, is a wider public health, good timing, problem, and it is one of the 4 priorities that we're dealing with in the health inequalities subgroup that I'm a member of at the moment. But absolutely something that we can be joining up with our strategy. I'm going to hand over to Helen for some more detail on that.
I may well also hand on in a second, but we certainly can give you a more detailed report on the impact. There is a huge amount of work that goes on impact. So obviously, when the strategy was developed, it was informed by a very significant consultation. A consultation of the same nature is going to go out very soon to the sort of the same areas that the original consultation went out on, to see how things have changed since between those two. That will give us some impact information, but there is also very significant impact information from all of the projects that are being worked on. We may be able to show some of them now if we can get the tech to work, but if not, we can certainly send some information around to the committee afterwards.
I can just add that I think when we look at the investment coming into Norwich around sport and physical activity, we look to direct that in the place of most need. So we review data around physical activity levels. If you look at Active Now, for example, and the referrals going through that program, that's a good example of that in terms of where the referrals are coming from, are from areas where there's higher inactivity levels. And whenever we are designing programs, we're trying to do that, working with communities at a real local level to help develop a range of initiatives that are more accessible and where people feel comfortable being active as well.
Thank you for that. Just that's really helpful, and it would be good. Perhaps we could have an early recommendation to have something on those metrics. The graph in there is actually adult obesity, so it's obviously that children's obesity is also very concerning. I wanted to ask about the deliverables, following up from that, and how they're identified. So it's interesting you say that about how you identify the actual active prescribing, or sorry, I forget the name of it, but the active now, yeah. So but there are strategic, you'd say it, in there at 106 it says work with Greater Norwich Growth Board to identify the most strategically important areas for increasing physical activity levels, to which offers of time and funding should be targeted, and community infrastructure levy. It would be good to see the metrics on how those are identified too, because the SIL money is going to key projects listed in here. The Dryside Leisure Facility in Diss at 1.2 million, 800k for a new 3G pitch at Slough Bottom Park, 460k for a new sports hub in Brundall. That it just says include. So I'm sure there are other ones. Those are probably the top line ones, but I'm wondering, like, what are the metrics behind how those are identified through SIL? How does it equate through pound to outcomes? I know I'm asking a big question there, but that's what we're here to scrutinise, is to look at how those big ticket projects actually link through to health outcomes.
Yeah, so I mean, for Norwich specifically, we obviously use our RETA data, which then gives us the areas to focus our funding, etc. on. But I think probably wider than that. If you look at Sport England and any funder, their main key driver will be reducing inequalities, and that naturally will lead to our RETA areas as well. So our focus in Norwich is very much around the RETAs and projects around there, and therefore accessing funding around those kind of areas. So I guess linking in, we just use the knowledge and data we've got within the council to then select our areas within Norwich. I appreciate there's this and everything in there. We tend to stick to Norwich and Broad and South. Steve will look at their areas and focus their attention. Obviously, the funding is the same. It's still got to meet the same parameters. So.
It's a champion.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very interesting report. There's a lot to read, like a phenomenal amount to read. I just want to ask about, where are we, 25, about the work area active environments, in particular, Slough Bottom Park, that's already been mentioned. I've got a few questions on it. If I don't get through them all now, I can send them through maybe. But in particular, what is the cost structure for hiring the new 3D pitches at Slough Bottom Park, and how does it compare to similar facilities across Greater Norwich? And just to double barrel the question, how is the pricing model being monitored to ensure affordability does not become a barrier to participation?
With this, my team are delivering the capital project to Slough Bottom Park. So, and Greg's working closely on this as well. So, along with the capital delivery, we're working on we're operating on a procurement process to identify an operator to take forward the operation of the pitch and the change of facilities that we're building there with the levelling up funding. the key thing in that, we are building social value criteria into that procurement process you'd expect. And we also are working on, and Greg, you're probably a little bit closer to this actually, so I'll hand over to you in a second, but we are working on ways in which the local community can have low cost access. So for example, Riverside Swimming Centre, we offer the Go for Less scheme, which offers, I think, swim for £1. There's similar stuff which we can implement at Slowbottom Park to make sure it's affordable for the local community and have community sessions there. And actually there's already been partners who have done some work at Slowbottom Park to try and boost football activity in the park already, actually, haven't there? So I don't know if, Greg, you want to add more to that?
Mark just alluded to, we've got sessions on there that are free to access at the moment. We would expect them to move on to the 3G once it's been built. And then I think you can look at other examples around the city, such as the FDC at Beaufort, where they do £1 session for local residents. You don't have to go for less or anything, they just put it straight across. They do free sessions for asylum seekers, refugees, just to make sure it's affordable. But I think it will all be tied up in the operator contract, so it will be in black and white that the pricing there will have to be a pricing level of some description. I can't give you finite details, obviously, because we haven't been through any of the procurement yet, but certainly it'll be something that will be in the contract.
Yeah, please do.
Question. And I've got further questions, but I might just do this one and email you if that's all right. Just so I don't hog the floor. But I am curious, were local residents consulted specifically about the Slowbottom Park development? And if so, what feedback was received regarding accessibility and affordability?
Okay. So, I mean, I wasn't really involved at the time the bid was put in, but this was one of the bidding processes like Towns Fund and Levelling Up, where under the previous government, you had very limited time periods to put in proposals. I know there were some ideas on the ground which Greg's team were working on, and very much to try and improve. Mile Cross is an area where sort of physical activity, I think, is pretty poor, possibly one of the poorest locations in the city for that. So hence the idea behind the project is built on some of the data we have to try and improve physical activity in that ward. So that it's very much a project that's based on improving activity of local residents, improving their health and well-being, and that's sort of the core emphasis of that. And that came out of some data which I think Greg's team pulled together. So the ability to do consultation leading up to the bid was very limited, because you literally, I won't quote the exact time, but there's an extremely limited period of time. I'm aware that that's changing now, like with the Pride in Place funding that's just been awarded. There's far more scope there for the local community and neighbourhoods to have influence on exactly how that money is spent. But that wasn't a possibility under Levelling Up. What we have done going forward, now we've got the money, is I chair a community steering group. So we hold that. We've been holding that, broadly speaking, every month. And that's getting a whole mix of the community together in Mile Cross to sort of influence and take the proposals forward. So we are actively engaging on pretty much a monthly basis with the local community in Mile Cross.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pop in with some questions now. Although not explicitly referenced in the sort of list of who the partners are, the City Council does provide support to parkrun to happen every week, both on a Saturday for the 5K and on a Sunday for the junior event. So it's Slowbottom and Eton Parks on a Saturday, and Waterloo, Lee Bridges and Eton on a Sunday. One of the things that Parkrun collects for every single person that participates every time is they've got on file their postcode, their age, and the frequency of their participation. And I wonder whether you've done any work with Parkrun to try and get access to that data, because that would seem to me to really inform where people are coming from to participate each week. And is that something that could potentially be taken away?
Well, that sort of information is really useful. There's sort of mapping and finding out where people are coming from through postcodes. I'm not sure. So we'll hand over to either Greg or George for a fuller answer.
So I think in the year 2 report, we haven't got explicit numbers around the participation numbers for all the park runs. I think we quote where the park runs are and where they take place, but we can certainly look to put that in the year 3 report as well. And the big numbers of people of all ages participating in the park runs across Norwich, and I know there are plans looking at further park runs, including a junior park run at Pilling Park possibly. But yeah, it's something, information that we could put into the year 3 report.
Yeah, I don't think it's publicly available, but I'm sure that it would be something that they would happily give.
I will speak to Ian.
Yeah,
I'll be meeting him next week, so I'll have a chat with him.
And I guess my other question on that is, the model of Parkrun, I guess, is quite an interesting one as far as return on investment is concerned. There's a one-off cost associated with getting an event up and running, and from then on in, it's entirely volunteer driven. And I wonder if any of the other organisations that are reflected in the strategy have a sort of similar thing where, that there's a relatively small startup cost, and then it just sort of happens at no cost to the end user and at no cost to the authority moving forward.
Yeah, there's quite a few examples of that. One specifically, we work with a small community group and work with their volunteers, and we will offer opportunities for training and development. So we might bring in a qualified instructor to start with to begin a project, to start that engagement, but then we'll offer the opportunity for staff or volunteers connected to that organisation then to gain qualifications and make it a sustainable offer long into the future. So it's a model that we've been looking at over the last couple of years. We've been working on a project through the Health and Wellbeing Partnership and the Nourishing Food Hub Network, and doing a lot of work with them over the last couple of years, and that's led to a wide range of activities taking place. So sustainable health walks, seated exercise programs, yoga, exercise in parks for families as well.
Excellent. I think that's really good. And if you can, that's obviously the holy grail, isn't it, to be able to get to a point where the council's not having to continually support something, and it just sort of almost is self-fulfilling going forward. Councillor Galvin, you've got another question.
Thank you. Yeah, it's such a great model, isn't it, Parkrun, that it the way it's grown and carried on and gone further and is open to many people. I wanted to just follow up on cycling and active travel to get to work, because it is very low, that figure, as has been pointed out, 11.5%, and a lot, many people work, and that's a really ideal place to build fitness into your day, isn't it, getting there? And it's where we work as councils, sort of transport. And I wanted to ask if there's any way that we as a council, this is perhaps one for Councillor Kidman, if there's any way that Cabinet could ask the GNGB to adjust the sort of top level plan to look at where it could be a bit more ambitious for off-road cycling, like in scoping a new network of off-road cycle paths. There haven't actually been any new ones in all my time here, and other places do put in new off-road cycle paths. We haven't done that. If that's ever been considered, if it comes into this strategy, if we've asked for it, and how our sustainable, we have got a sustainable, is it the sustainable transport plan that we have as a council, how that is taken into account by this active, because to build in activity into daily life is surely one of the holy grails of what we all want to do. And the way we can do that is to have safe spaces that people can build into their daily life to do that. So would that be a potential recommendation, to be really ambitious in that area?
I think it's always good to be ambitious, and I used to have transport in my portfolio. I don't any longer, but I can speak to my cabinet colleagues for whom it is a responsibility, and it just underpins the whole strategy, where physical activity is coming in all shapes and forms, from sort of more organised exercise to simple things like not getting a bus or using your car to get to work or anywhere else you're going. So I will certainly speak to my fellow cabinet members about that recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Galvin, did you want to make that as a formal recommendation on?
Yes, possible recommendation then to ask GNGB to adjust the plan to look at where it could be more ambitious for active travel, including, for example, scoping a new network, a new improved network of off-road cycle paths, and to actually just check when that was considered in the top line putting together of this plan. I know it goes down to detail and that's really good, but to look at the way we can start to shift the dial on that very low figure of active travel to work would be to start to put that plan in a bit deeper earlier. And I know that East Norwich will probably be having some of that at its heart. So just to get that, but to really get it put in there, I think the council.
Alexa, you've got that recommendation down. I'll happily second that. While we're here, we'll pop that to the vote. All those in favour of that, please indicate. That is carried unanimously. Thank you for that. Councillor Herkler.
Yeah, it's just a related point, but it's probably more for the active travel. No, sorry, for the active Norfolk folks. There's interesting research at UEA associated with the Tyndall Centre around making cycling more inclusive and accessible. And I was just wondering whether you had these conversations or whether you have these links where there's specific focus on making cycling policies, designing cycling policies in a way that ethnic minority groups find it easier to cycle, or groups that generally aren't so represented in the cyclist population. So just, whether that's a link that exists, or that's research you're familiar with.
Yeah, it's quite tricky because then the active travel kind of side of it sits with county council. So it's us influencing it from within the sports and physical activity working group. But yeah, it tends to be county council kind of led on the active travel side of things. But that's the whole point of the working group, is so that we can all influence each other, so to speak. Yeah, we are aware of groups that make it more inclusive. Certainly down at Harford, they do a lot of work around cycling and inclusivity. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that can be improved, but mainly through our influence rather than directly via us, if that makes sense.
Do you have a follow-up?
I guess just, whether that's a commitment to take it away. Right.
Are there any other points on this, or shall we bring this item to a close? Councillor Sands.
Councillor Manning, I've forgotten Amanda's last name. So Fox. We are in the process of organising what we call a dog day afternoon for all councillors. It's a completely non-political afternoon. If councillors don't have dogs, they're welcome to come along and buy a dog from somewhere. Be on both at Southern Park. We'll walk around the park one afternoon, probably a Sunday, and it's purely a social event. And yeah, blow the cobwebs out in the fresh air. Just I'll throw that in because it should be the fun for everyone. And as I said, strictly non-political.
Thank you. Councillor Galvin.
But I'd happily borrow one. There was one thing on page 17, just the school streets and play streets initiatives across Greater Norwich. Just a bit worrying to see there's currently 0 play street schemes in there. Do you want to say a bit more about why that is, and also on a wider point, how do you use this reporting to trigger areas of concern? There is a recommendation around that, depending what the answer is, but I'd say we need to assess what the low level of uptake is due to and how we can remedy it.
Yes, the lack of uptake was because it was an initiative that came from central government. So it wasn't really influenced locally, and I think it wasn't, therefore, kind of, we weren't able to influence it or anything. It came from central government in, and was kind of one of these things that was kind of parachuted in, and they said they'd support with closing the roads around the schools, and before and after school, but it needed buy-in from the teachers and volunteers and everything like that, and I don't believe they had the infrastructure locally to do it. So I think it was much more of a, and that's why we had it in our strategy, because it came from a national strategy, and we've just referenced that it's not been effective in Norwich, hence why the 0, but we didn't want to ignore it in our reporting, if that makes sense.
There were a couple of trial projects in year 1. I think Dussondale was one, and another one in Wyndham. And then I think a following review, for some reason, it did go any further due to the challenges of the early initiatives. But it's something I could look at why it's not gone any further than that, and report back.
Would you say there are good health impacts associated? I mean, it'd be worthwhile doing that because it's clearly linked to health, and so it might be worth doing. I do happen to know, I think perhaps not in my ward, but close by, one was tried. We certainly have issues around traffic and schools in the ward, quite severe and ongoing issues that we try lots of different ways to solve them, and we never quite manage it. And that did look like a good scheme, but I think, as you say, it put too much onus on teachers and parents to staff it. From what I remember, it wasn't properly set up, but I guess it's worked in other places. So it would be really useful to think about, some ideas come from central government and work, don't they? So that might be the case.
I know nationally there was a lot of issues around it because the volunteers and the teachers who were on the road were getting abuse from parents who still wanted to drive through. And I knew that was one of the key issues. And if you're a volunteer, you don't need to stand in the middle of a road, blocking a road, getting abuse, do you? And I know that was one of the key things that came out nationally about it. I can't say that was specific to Norwich, Norfolk, but certainly nationally.
And it's a really interesting point, isn't it? We know in my own ward of Eton, we know from the speed sensor that we have that's on greenways from time to time, that during term time there are 800 car movements a day coming into Eton in order to drive children to and collect them from Eton Primary School. So that's 200 cars going along greenways in the morning, coming back, and then repeating that in the afternoon. And that, it's only when you look at you think about the numbers in that context that you realise what a significant number that is.
Sorry, I'm following up on that. There's huge amounts of research that show how bad that is for children. So it's a significant health problem.
Councillor Champion.
I was going to follow up that question. I've attended several car-free days, which are very similar to the Play Street scheme, which isn't being parachuted in. It's something which we've already done with some success, although I would argue that with a bit more support, we could do far better. How do these things relate? Have you guys connected those dots? Is that the car-free days and the Play Streets? Is that something we could look further into?
Yeah, I think it's a conversation to have with the active travel team at Norfolk County Council, and looking at that. We do have a we also this year run a kind of an active travel marketing promotional campaign to push the messages around that. But I think there's a bit of work to do around getting up to speed with some of the priorities around active travel for the area. Like I mentioned earlier, some of the work going on with schools around bikeability and promoting skills for children and young people to be able to bike to school as well, and the activation money that we're doing with that. But there's other things that are happening, so I think to come back with a bit more of a report around what's actually happening.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Right, I'm going to draw a line under this item now. So thank you very much, everyone who's joined us for this. Has been really helpful, really useful answers. We'll have a few moments for those who are just here for sports and. Sorry, is it? Yeah. Yeah, so we'll have a few moments just for you to, you're welcome to sort of leave now, and then we'll get everything reorganised as we move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Mic back on. So we're now on to item 5, which is pre-scrutiny of the Norwich City Hall Reimagined Cabinet Report. As a reminder, there is a public report in the agenda pack, followed by 2 exempt appendices. So please can we be careful that we discuss the public report first, and then we'll go into closed session for the exempt appendices. For those 3 members in here who are on Planning Applications Committee, can you also be very careful about how you phrase any comments that you make, so as not to predetermine yourself when it comes to this coming to Planning Applications Committee in the future. And at the moment, for the avoidance of doubt, if you want to speak and it's green, don't, and if it's white, you're fine. So for anyone who's got it on a laptop, just be very cautious. But there's reports between what we can be talking on at the moment and what we can't. And I'm going to hand over to Mark. I think you're just going to walk us through it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'll do a quick introduction to this item. So Norwich City Hall is a landmark building of rich heritage and civic importance. The Council has developed concept designs to refurbish the building and explore a new extension to the rear. These proposals aim to modernise City Hall, improving public access, supporting community use and unlocking economic potential. Public consultation through Get Talking Norwich showed strong support for the project's goals. Over 1,600 people took part, with priorities including better access to services, more community events and preserving the building's heritage. Despite its iconic status, most residents rarely visit City Hall, highlighting the need for change. The preferred option is a comprehensive refurbishment with flexible design to accommodate future changes resulting from local government reorganisation. As outlined in this report and the associated appendices, this is a significant opportunity to deliver a solution for the building and put the foundations in place for reimagining City Hall. This is supported by extensive consultation, market testing and benchmarking. The building is currently underutilised, requires investment to preserve its heritage, and it is a liability currently costing a significant amount to run each year. However, it also has potential to deliver a great social and economic return to the city, as well as generating income to support council services. There are significant risks with a do-nothing approach. This doesn't deliver a future-focused solution for the building and could risk the building becoming redundant without a future viable use. Progressing the project to gain listed building consent will deliver a clear, implementable plan for the building which delivers modern, high-quality office space while preserving and enhancing the building's fabric. This will provide the best possibility for the building to continue in a future viable use and deliver wider, enhanced benefits to residents and businesses in Norwich. The next step is to progress to REIB Stage 3, which includes detailed surveys, refined designs and preparation for planning a listed building consent. This will make the project shovel-ready and able to secure funding quickly when opportunities arise. Up to £1 million is needed to fund this next phase. Securing this building consent is a key milestone. It reduces risk, confirms what changes are acceptable, and ensures Norwich is ready to deliver improvements that reflect community priorities, protect heritage, and support the city's future.
Great, thank you very much. It's probably just worth just making it very clear to members. So what you have before you is the Cabinet report. So when it talks about recommendations. They're not recommendations for us as a committee. They're recommendations that Cabinet will be looking at on the 12th of November, and it's for us to potentially recommend tweaks to that or let our point of view go. But we're not, so to speak, taking the decision on this item. So I'll hand over to members for questions on the public facing part of this document, please. Councillor Herkner.
Thank you. I was just thinking, this microphone doesn't like me. I just in the context of local government reorganisation, there's so much uncertainty about, you know, where's the council, which council is it going to be? How big is it going to be? Would it fit into this building? Would it be in County Hall? How many councillors would there be? Would they fit into this council chamber? I just wonder what would be lost by waiting for another 6 months until we have a clearer picture of the shape of local government reorganisation. Why progress this now rather than wait another 6 months and have a lot more clarity about the needs and the shape and the requirements?
Yeah, so we've considered this really carefully in terms of the next steps. There's a number of advantages to progressing as we're proposing. What I would say is just in terms of the work we've done, we've built. We've modelled the concept designs based on initially the council's current makeup and staffing numbers to understand what a solution would look like. But there's more detail below the line, but you will see in there, and I can point you to the page number in a moment. But we've also modelled 100% commercial and 100% council options in there. So essentially, we're certain that the concept designs that we're looking at are flexible, irrespective of what comes out of local government reorganisation. We wouldn't be recommending this if that wasn't the case, because fundamentally, some of the main things we're looking at is getting some of the big decisions over the line about some of those big decisions for the building that make it more flexible, whatever its use in the future. The key thing is that getting this, one of the major risks to the project is gaining planning and listed building consent. If we gain that, it massively de-risks the project and gives a solution for the building. When we know what the broad direction of local government reorganisation is and what that successive authority is likely to look like, I think there would need to be a further review, probably in spring next year, in terms of what the accommodation solutions would look like. And at that point in time, we would be able to revisit the business case. But I don't think it's going to change the fundamentals of some of the things we're looking to do with the concept designs, because a lot of this is about making spaces more flexible. So, for example, on the second floor, we've got lots of cellular rooms, and what the fundamentals we're trying to get over the line at this point in time is decisions with sort of Conservation of Historic England about opening up some of those floor plates. As soon as you do that, you've got really flexible floor plates that you can use whatever purpose this building goes into. So that's some of the key. That's the key crux of what we're trying to achieve. De-risk the project. The other aspect I'd just say is that for funding opportunities in the future, increasingly there's a need to have full business cases and have consents in place to gain funding. That's certainly what we're seeing, and essentially by doing, we will have, if we get the consents in the line, we will have a shovel-ready scheme. What I mean by that is business case and consents, which is what is increasingly needed to gain funding, and various funding opportunities may arise as we go into the next year or two through devolution and local government reorganisation.
Thank you. Councillor Kendrick.
Yes, I entirely endorse that approach. I think there'd be nothing worse for this country if basically local government atrophies for 2 years and saying, well, we can't make any tough decisions, we've got to wait till local government reorganisation. I think whatever may happen, I think the proposals are sensible, and I think they should be progressed. Perhaps indeed the final decision will be made by the authority, but all the same time, I don't see why we shouldn't be preparing that groundwork in the first place.
Thank you. Councillor Galvin.
Thank you. And thank you for the report. And just as a side line, this is a top level thing, and I don't know whether we could do this, but so I've got two things really, one very specific and one wider, which is I totally appreciate having all the details there to look at, but there is a lot to look at, and it did take me a long time to read it all. And I'm kind of aware that all councillors haven't seen that or been involved, but I think it is important for all councillors to see it and be involved. And I wonder if there could be a presentation or a walkthrough, some sort of site visit to just really, if you're good at reading plans and understand that world, you can read a plan and understand what's going on. It takes me a long time to get to understand what's being offered there. So that's one almost recommendation. I'm not sure officers could help on how that could happen, but my more specific question, if that's okay for me to ask a specific one, is about the heating and the cooling of the building going forward and the plans for that. Again, it's not something I'm not sure I completely 100% understood from reading it. So it said the central plant will move away from the VRF systems to supplementary 4-pipe air source heat pumps that can provide simultaneous heating and cooling and configured to operate with the existing plant. I just wondered, could you explain a bit more? I know we're not going into the you're just trying to scope a wider thing, but what I'm trying to understand is, are we being ambitious enough at this stage? As Paul said, we don't want to ossify, we don't want to stand still. We've got a chance now to make the heating and the cooling of this building zero carbon. Is that shovel ready? Is that built in? If not, why not? If you could just explain a bit about the heating. And I know we've got some very old systems in this building, but also I would like to note that the inventor of the air source heat pump was from Norwich, and not only from Norwich, but worked in a civic capacity in Norwich. So it's a national thing we can be proud of, a civic thing we can be proud of. It'd be so great if the new building could reflect that.
So just on all the information that's there, just to pick up on that point first. So I think the information you need to make you're not making a decision, but the information needed for the decision that Cabinet are making really is in the white papers. That's the key thing. So what we'll be asking Cabinet in November is for the funding to go through to listed building consent. But what we've done to be transparent and be clear on all the work we've been doing is the green papers of the business case and the concept design. There is actually more work, even more work than this, but I'd be sort of destroying lots of trees if we printed it all off for you. And I'll come on to one of those additional pieces of work which we've not produced in there, but because it's so detailed and technical. But the key thing there is this is so you understand some of the work we've been doing in the background, but we're not asking Cabinet in November for the full ask to refurbish the building. We're asking for that sum to continue the professional fees and gain the listed building and planning consent. So but what you can see is we've built a solid business case from what we know at this stage. We've got the concept designs. In terms of council presentation, absolutely, yeah, we can do this. What we're keen to do is get an endorsement for the direction we're going in, and absolutely we can do that councillor presentation. And indeed, before we submit for planning and listed building consent, we would do some further public engagement as well and share the concept designs. On heating and cooling of the building, one of those technical pieces of information we've been doing is to produce AECOM have produced a mechanical and electrical a review of the building, which includes heating and plumbing, and basically that's done an options appraisal of where the optimum solution is going forward. I won't go into all the details, but there are some questions in there, and we'll need to build on that going to the next stage as to exactly what the optimum solution is. But we are certainly looking at maximising the efficiency of the building whilst preserving its heritage. There's clearly a balance in this building being Grade 2 star listed. And also some of this comes down to there's some difficult decisions to be made. For example, the windows, for example, if you to get the building thermally efficient, you could argue replace all the windows, but then that'd be a lot of carbon down the drain. Do you know what I mean? So there's some difficult decisions there that we need to work through, I think, in terms of getting that optimum solution for the building. This building's never going to be as efficient as a new build. for hopefully obvious reasons, but there'll be a balance there. We haven't determined exactly where that balance is yet. What we've done so far is we've said, I think there's some detail in the outline business case which outlines some of those options, and some of those at the moment we've put a preferred option to calculate some of the costs. But that doesn't mean it's set in stone. We would work on that as we go into REBA stage 3 and submit for planning and listed building consent, and happy to pick up conversations over some of that with members who are particularly interested in that area. Yeah.
Thank you. Coming back to perhaps a recommendation around that we could think about then, to recommending to Cabinet that they explore that in more detail and perhaps weight towards put a weight towards future the building in the future being highly efficient as much as it can be. I know that windows were replaced in the building already, but unfortunately when they were replaced they weren't double glazed, which is a shame. So we need to make sure that we sort of build in and bake into this really ambitious targets around that, because that is one thing we can do at this stage, isn't it? If we do that now, future whoever is in this building in the future, whether it's whatever it becomes, will benefit from that, and future citizens will benefit as well, and the costs will be kept down as well. So I think if we can make a recommendation around having a bit more detail on that and looking at the options in Cabinet, having an ambitious plan around that in the future, because it's also a model building we're actually modelling how things should be as we do that. So as ambitious as we are, we show how it can be done. It's a demonstration project as well as everything else. So I think it's worth making that point to Cabinet if possible.
I'm just trying to get my head around where that recommendation sits in terms of the decision that Cabinet is actually taking on the 12th of November. And it's entirely possible that we could have a recommendation along those lines to put that into Cabinet's thought process, but it wouldn't necessarily be reflected in the decision they're taking. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think it would change the recommendation as such, but it's certainly something as officers we can take away, and we can certainly. I mean, it is highly technical, but we can certainly do a presentation to members which includes some of the information about how we're arriving at an optimum solution and what that looks like. Yeah. So I can take that away, and we can build that into the consultation plan, which officers will develop subject to Cabinet's decision in November.
Lou.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that although that wouldn't be a recommendation that would impact on the decision Cabinet's going to make, it could go forward as a comment from Scrutiny that you want that ambition to be carried forward into the business case.
Yeah. Have you noted what that comment is?
Yes, so I'll just read it back to you. So the comment is, I suppose it's not a recommendation, but a comment to Cabinet that they explore the heating and cooling of the building in more detail, considering the future efficiency of the building, and being ambitious around that, or something to that effect. I can amend that.
Trying to think of the best form of words, and being ambitious as a demonstrator net zero building, considering its role as a civic building centre, or civic exemplar.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. We need to consider the benefits of that, whether the cost benefit and additional value to that. In the wording that could go in, couldn't it? To explore the cost benefits of additional investment that it would take, and also not just the cost, but the general benefits to the building and the city of creating a more efficient building.
Yeah, I was going to suggest to highlight the potential to demonstrate how a listed building can be made efficient. So having the potential of reputational gain, I suppose.
Just a comment on top of that, it's an opportunity for us, isn't it, to set a standard for buildings of this age and type.
So we've got that comment that's been proposed by Councillor Galvin. I'll happily second that. Are members happy with that comment going forward to Cabinet for consideration? Want to indicate? Yep, that's. Were you happy with a comment? Yep, thank you. We're probably still working our way. Yeah. No, I wasn't bringing that item to a close. So no, very much. No. I just thought trying something slightly different. That when there is a recommendation that's clearly there, let's get it, dealt with and move on. So no, more's the pity. We're here for longer. And I don't know whether we need to formally have anything in about a presentation for members, or whether we just, it has been agreed that that's a good thing. And I just have to say how beneficial I found it when group leaders received Mark's presentation, letting us know, seeing some more detail. I think that was really beneficial. So I think I'd definitely endorse that. So expanded.
Possibly, could it be a bit of a site visit as well as a presentation? I don't know, just got a love of like walking. It's only here, isn't it? So if I don't know if that works for you, but I'd really like to see, when you say this room or that room, I don't actually know what that room is.
Yeah, I mean, there are rooms in the building that actually a lot of people don't ever go into. So yeah, I mean, we can do it in City Hall and then do a walk around afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So we move on to any further questions on the non-exempt papers, the white ones. Councillor Stuteley and then Councillor Hoepner.
I've just got this item has already attracted quite a bit of interest from the public and some criticism as well because of the cost associated with taking this forward. So I'm hoping that, I think I'm probably looking to you, Lou, to excuse me, to tell us as members and the public as well the real benefit of this and this investment and what we will get out of it as a city and a council as well, please.
Thank you, Councillor Stuteley. So I think that we see this very much as the city's building, and it's not the council's building, but it's the city's, and we want very much for the building to provide economic and social benefit to the city. It's much loved, much cherished. We know that from the results of the consultation. The building is, underoccupied, underused at the moment, and we know from the consultation that people want to be able to access it more and use it more. We also, from the work that we've done around the economic strategy, are clear that there are some gaps in provision, particularly around office accommodation in the city, and we think that there's some of those gaps we could help to fill by using this building in the middle of the city. So there's lots of benefits that the building can provide. We are very conscious of the cost of undertaking the feasibility work and the work to achieve planning consent. We've really considered the use of public money in that way. What we want to achieve, and Mark has previously explained this, is we want the investment made in the building, and we want that to be made swiftly with that ambition attached to it. So it's important that we spend this next kind of chunk of money to get to that listed building consent stage in advance of the LGR decision, so that we've got a plan and we've got something that's ready to go at the point at which decisions are made, and we can then put that opportunity into that new local government structure across the whole of Norfolk.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So do you have, I suppose I've got two follow-up questions to that. Firstly, technical point on something that you mentioned about availability of office space. It was my understanding that there is an abundance of empty office space in the city at the moment. So I'm not entirely sure where that comes from. So perhaps you can come back on that. But also, again, because this has got some interest from the public and the media, is there a bottom line to this in terms of the building becoming self-sufficient, paying for itself, and ultimately paying for that £1 million initial investment, and then everything on top? Yeah, well, if you could explain that, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I'm going to leave the first part of your question to Mark because he'll have the detailed knowledge on that, but I'll answer the second part. The business case here, of course, does contain some of that information about the commercial case for the building. It will be very much the intention to weigh up the investment against income projections, against savings of costs of running the building, some of the stuff that you've just talked about sustainability, what difference does that make? So very much there'll be a full business case to consider that sets out what the return is on investment. You know, this won't be an investment without considering what the return is.
So on the first point, a few years ago, we the planning department did a study. It's called the Ramadas study, which looked at office accommodation in the city. As part of this project, we spoke to them and got that updated. The key thing here is that what the city lacks is Grade A office space. It's not just office space verbatim. We have a lack of high quality office space. So my economic development team often have inquiries, and we just lack the high quality space that we need to fit some of the needs of people, of businesses. So we occasionally get businesses who want to relocate to Norwich. We've got one at the moment, in fact, but trying to find that Grade A office space is challenging. So it's not just, so there are vacant offices, but they're not Grade A. Is the simple answer. And also office is changing, so a lot of the crime now is for sort of more flexible serviced office space as well, rather than your typical sort of long lease on a wider suite. You know, businesses often want easy in, easy out. We've just done a project, the digital hub at Townsend House, part of the Towns Fund project, and that's very much a flexible office solution, and that's what the market is increasingly wanting.
Yeah, Lou.
Councillor Stewley, if I could just add just one thing to Mark's comments, and of course the aim of this proposal is to support the city centre to thrive and to be sustainable into the longer term. So we know, don't we, that our city centre usage is changing quite significantly and potentially will do so further over time. We've seen lots of development around the outskirts of the city, and part of the kind of intention of this project is to help the centre thrive.
I can add some stats to that, actually, because we've got around 200 to 250 people in the building, generally speaking, but we've got 700 workstations. So you just do that. If you've got 700 people in here every day, that's you know, it's 500 people going out on the city at lunchtime. It's 500 more. You know, people, footfall is so essential to the city centre. So that's another key element of some of the benefits we derive. Just one of the benefits. There's more than that, but that we derive from taking a scheme forward and getting the building working more effectively.
Thank you. Councillor Hooker, next, please.
Thank you. It's probably a bit of a roundabout question, but it really stood out to me how many people say they never come to City Hall. But then I don't think it's surprising because there's not much for them to do here. There's a reception and that's it. And so or they could come to a full council meeting or a scrutiny committee meeting, I suppose. But there aren't really many ways of interacting with the council. And so I'm just wondering rethinking how the council interacts with residents plays into these plans. And I'm also thinking, this in the context of the task and finish group around enhancing deliberative democracy and citizen participation. How will the space enable that, and how will the council operations enable people not just to come in, but also engage with the council and not just kind of be in the building, use it as another library space, but have an active interaction with the council.
I can potentially talk through some of the ideas, but I'd need to refer to stuff that's.
So I'm just,
below the
yeah, that
line.
was a sort
Yeah.
of a bit, the ideas there are covered in the exempt pages. So if there are, sorry. Yes, but the answer you need to get is covered in the exempt pages. So are there any other bits that are specifically related? Because we can park that and then we'll come back and look at that when we go below the line, if that's okay. Councillor Smith, you had a question. Is it on the non-exempt pages?
Yes, it is. Although Mark might might refer to stuff in the exempt afterwards. So apologies. It was about the rear of the City Hall extension on page 28-29, just the two short paragraphs there. And it says that the outline business case, due to the stronger demand, better alignment with city centre goals, similar to the answers Councillor Stootley received to his question, I suppose, the business case found that the office and the hotel extension had the greatest benefits. So I wanted to ask really about, well, how again is that arrived at? And I understand there's a balance to be struck between the building being economically beneficial, and Lou, in your answer, you talked a lot about it being the city's building, people being able to come into it and appreciate it in new ways. And I appreciate, again, this is going to be a new building by definition, but if it's a hotel or private office space, by definition, those are things that citizens aren't coming into that often. So the two just don't, in my mind at least, don't necessarily sit logically together. So I just wonder how was the decision came to that they would be the best uses of the space, of the new space, and how would that marry with our other intentions of it being more of a public community space?
So I guess I thought the thought process there is that actually the existing civic building is what we're in today, and that there's actually a wealth of spaces that can be used for public and civic activities within the concept designs, which again I can go into a little bit more detail below the line. The extension at the back and the public realm at the back, those elements supposed the public realm is that says on the tin. The idea is that would be public realm. Essentially, the extension you want to put to some sort of use that, the idea was there to put some sort of commercially beneficial use. I mean, there's obviously significant cost in doing it. It would be great to see that space developed. And from the work we did under the previous stage, about a year ago we brought a strategic outline case here and discussed sort of the options around uses and got broad endorsement to those options that we were looking at. The sort of hotel extension really is responding to some of the stuff we're seeing from the economic strategy around sort of tourism numbers in the city relative to benchmark other cities that are, for a city with a wealth of heritage, we sort of don't perform as well as other similar sized cities like York, for example, in terms of tourism numbers. And again, that has an impact on the economic success of the city, because tourism brings in money. So that and we lack good quality hotel provision, which would drive footfall and spend in the local economy. So it was one of the things that would help the economic strategy. But what we're doing is we've built up a lot of knowledge on that sector through the work we've done, and we're going to feed that into the master plan that was endorsed on the back of the adoption of the economic strategy in October Cabinet. So we've adopted the economic strategy, and on the back of that, we've got resources to take forward the master plan. So that's why we're sort of pausing that element for the time being, because a lot of the information we just want to build into that, because there may be other sites the council owns which are better for some of these things that the economic strategy is trying to achieve. So yeah, we explored those uses because we were looking at uses that would be most viable, essentially, to deliver the extension in the public realm.
Thank you. Councillor Galvin.
Yeah, briefly, it's above the line, this, because I think it's quite a general point. We can pick up, there are more specific things later on that might speak to this, but I think there is a bit of an issue that the top part of the report doesn't make it quite clear enough, the democratic function and history of City Hall, that it really does belong to the people of Norwich. So I just want to underline that. It sort of calls it a symbol of local democracy, and I think, well, that's one way of putting it, but it's kind of more than a symbol. It really is owned by the people, and I think as a follow on to that, it would be really good to have I know it's impossible to tell everyone everything all the time, and you need to progress this work in detail below the line, and because a lot of it's commercial, but I think there would be ways to adjust the narrative a bit to include the democratic legacy of the building and have a wider community-led City Hall working group of some kind, which was more open to ongoing input. I know we had the consultation and it said we've listened to what the consultation said, but to have something a bit more iterative, in line with the status of the public building. So to make sure we involve young people, to make sure it's fully inclusive, to just kind of make sure we touch all those bases as we go forward now, once this is agreed, that we go forward, and then those conversations are kept going and kept open, and indeed gone out and looked for if we notice we haven't asked certain groups that we. So I think I'd like to see some sort of recommendation around a wider community-led City Hall working group. I don't want to give everyone a huge task that's very hard to deliver, but I think having got this far with the detail things, it would now be good to start to possibly go back round. I don't know what other members think, or officers, what's possible around that.
Mark, do you want to?
Yeah, we certainly plan to do wider public engagement ahead of submitting planning applications. I think obviously a lot of what we're dealing with is quite high level. So where we've got to today has been we've been collecting a lot of technical data. So I talked about the M&E strategy. We've had commercial advice put into this. We've had a statement of heritage significance built into it, which has led to sort of feasible concepts. So the aim is now, after hopeful endorsement in November, that we feed that into public consultation now. So we were subject to that endorsement. We will start building what that consultation plan looks like, but we can take on board the comments and feed them into our thoughts in terms of what that looks like. Lou, did you want to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wonder, Councillor Galvin, if we could perhaps think about a recommendation that suggested that we give some thought to how we best engage with the city about future use of the building and how we reach the kind of widest group of people, what methods we use, and then maybe we could bring something back at some point once we've got further on with the planning applications, just that Scrutiny could have a look at.
That sounds good, and to note that we would like to see a high level of perhaps higher than normal level of engagement, given the status of the building, the ongoing sort of importance of it. So sometimes it's been said in the past when we've asked for a consultation, oh, it's too expensive to try and get that group involved, etc. That has been said. So I think in this case it might be, just to understand that this is going to be worth it for everyone, to make sure that everyone's being listened to in an active way. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Do you want to formally propose that?
Yeah, happy to.
Yeah, and Councillor Hopkins will second that. Members happy to endorse Lou's suggestion about? Yeah.
For quite a number of years, I've actually led groups around City Hall, children and groups of adults, sometimes informally, people who've been standing around outside, and I brought them inside, and most times formally. And I think it would be a good idea, if we wanted to raise the profile of City Hall amongst the public, is to encourage regular tours, guided tours, not just people wandering around City Hall, because certainly the last group of adults I brought around most of them had never been in City Hall, and they went away with a very, very positive image. And that's one way of spreading the word and generating a vision amongst the people of Norwich for how the City Hall could change.
Well, I remember, Councillor Sands, when I was Lord Mayor, that I had an opportunity to sort of entertain one of the groups that you had brought around. So, but you know, and it's a really valid point, because they are people who haven't previously come into City Hall and really do enjoy the sort of seeing the bits that are you don't get if you come to Scrutiny or Council Chamber, where you can come into the Lord Mayor's Parlour and see all that history that's sort of reflected there. So and
I was going to suggest, can we pick that up as part of our task and finish group for participative democratic engagement, because I think that fits quite nicely, and it's all groups, and we can certainly look at going out to particular things, people like schools, universities and stuff, that could be included in. We're certainly very keen to be really ambitious going forward with our democratic engagement, and making sure that we've got the best technology and facilities to promote that.
Right, Mark.
Just going to mention that, so we've certainly, if we look at Hackney Town Hall, which is one of the town halls that our architects have worked on, they've done some really interesting stuff around sort of putting the civic regalia on show, and they do tours for school children. I mean, so as part of the wider project, we are looking at some of those ideas around how we could do that. Obviously, that won't happen like tomorrow. It would need to be built into the part of the wider project, but there are opportunities there that we've taken learnings from other councils on. And also the clock tower is in the mix as well, so we're looking at ways in which we could better utilise the clock tower. There's a number of rooms in the clock tower, and again, with the tourism economy that I spoke about earlier, and trying to promote that, again, if we can open that up in the future, that would be amazing, because it would be a really great tourist attraction, which we are built into the concept ideas. So,
and actually, you make a really valid point. Not too far away, 20-something miles east in Great Yarmouth. There, Yarmouth Town Hall, you walk in, the first thing you see is a big cabinet with all the civic regalia in. And I'm a governor at a school there, and the head teacher just brought a load of children unannounced to the and got to, I think it might have been frowned upon here, but someone came along, opened the cabinet, got the mace out for the children to hold, and that was really, for them, a really beneficial opportunity. Any other questions at this stage before I move below the line? Yep, Councillor Laws.
Just to comment as a sort of semi-question, I'm being careful about the comments I make, bearing in mind your comments at the beginning, Chair. I guess there's a balance to be struck between this building as a sort of civic, public space, and its ownership by, if you like, in a broad sense, by the people of Norwich as a whole, and its commercial value, which would be particularly relevant to the development of the continuing development of the city centre. And I guess, am I right in saying really there's kind of three strands to this? There's refurbishment of this building, bringing it up to date in terms of some of the energy efficiency and so on, better utilising underutilised space here. That's the second strand. And thirdly, sort of some new development, particularly out the back, which brings in perhaps more the commercial side, the hotel and office part of it. Is that a fair enough sort of summary of what we're trying to achieve?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's just on that third strand, we're in terms of the extension of the back, we're just that element we're not proposing to take forward just at this point in time, because we want to build some of that thinking into the wider master plan, so we understand where the best where the best investment in the city is for those types of new developments.
Thank you. I think I will now Move to exclude the press and public from the meeting during the consideration of items on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as specified in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Do I have a second? We back? Okay, welcome back. So we've had our 2 recommendations, I think, or there was a comment and a recommendation that were
Comments and some actions.
some actions that were voted on and discussed earlier. There's nothing else to add into that. So the item on City Hall reimagined pre-scrutiny of the Cabinet report is now finished. So thank you. We're now at more than 2 hours since the meeting began. So I just need to ask members if there's any items that are opposed that are coming, we can just take. Councillor Hoogner.
Not really opposed, but I would like us, as part of the work programme, consider the request by the Task and Finish Group on enhancing deliberative democracy and citizen participation, and their request to for 2 additional for the nomination of 2 additional members of the group, so that quorum becomes easier.
So yeah, are members happy to endorse that, just to allow some additional members to the Task and Finish Group?
I may come in, Chair, on that. So in the Constitution, we can't take that directly at this meeting. I did email yourself, chairing House Hoogner, so the Constitution states that with that, we'd have to just put that as a very small report onto the next meeting. So it'll be very quick,
yeah.
But we can then, but it doesn't hinder any of the progress of the group. It just means that we can then gather that, and we just need to get a formal decision at that one, if that's okay. So that'll be on the next meeting agenda.
And we've got item 6, the Lionhounds information bulletin has been tabled. I don't propose to take any questions on that now, but no doubt they could be directed to Democratic Services to forward to the appropriate person to be answered. Councillor Galvin.
It's not a question on it, but it was just a request really to us to be involved, if Scrutiny can be involved in the scoping of the lessons learned report that's mentioned. So it looks like the document won't be completely put together till after the liquidation has been completed, but it'll probably be worked on between now and then, I could imagine. And could we have any updates shared with us confidentially if needed to be before the version's completed? So there's 2 things really, well 3, and to have a deadline to when we're going to get it. So a deadline of when we'll have it after the liquidation's gone through. If we can actually input into the scoping of the lessons learned report, in other words, what we'd like to see as its scope, and if we could have an update before the final version's completed, just to keep things rolling, keep us cited on it.
Yep. Some nods on that, so I think that's fine. In which case, I think we're done then. Thank you very much. And yep, thanks.